Well, Merry Christmas, or at least Merry Christmas season to all of you. I hope this is, it's such a great time of the year for all of you. I know it is for me and for my family and for the North Point family. We love that you're a part of this. We love that you join us here each week to study a little and to allow the presence of Jesus to come into your life through the Word. Hope this is helpful. I think my favorite part of the great traditional Christmas experience that I have had for the past 69 years of my life, I think my favorite part still is the surprise of the presents that are given. The hiding of presents, the anticipation, the wonder of the mysterious that we try to create. It has always been such a fun part of the experience for me. I can remember years ago when I was just a teenager, and I'm an only child, and so giving presents, the only presents that I really gave away were to my parents. Maybe a handful of friends, but really it was just my parents. And I loved giving presents back to them just as much as they loved giving them to me. I know they passed that on, the love of that on to me. There was one year, honestly, I bought their present probably in September. I had saved my money. I worked little odd jobs. And I saved up the money, but more than just buying the present early, I wrapped it in September and put it in our living room. Now, it wasn't just a present that was sitting out on a table or, down on the floor against the wall. I actually wrapped a refrigerator box as a Christmas present. Picture it. A refrigerator box that I used an entire roll of paper on, made the biggest bow that I could make, and then stuck all kinds of other bows, maybe 2 or 3 bags of bows on it with ribbon around it, and secretly brought it into my living room one day when my parents were gone. And they got to walk into the house sometime in September and see this huge refrigerator box wrapped. Inside the box, I gave hints. I talked about it all the time. It was always present right there in front of us. And what I gave them was a huge wall mirror that was still on the wall in my house after my parents had passed away. They loved that mirror, and I wrapped it and put it in the box and stuffed it with newspaper so you couldn't figure out what it was. I remember my mom would go there every day when I was around, and she would go over and push on the box and hear the ruffling of the newspaper inside. She had no idea what it was until Christmas morning. Such a fun memory. Finding the hidden, uncovering things where you least expect to find them. That's a whole lot like studying the Bible for me. Even following Jesus, always full of surprises. The story of Christmas is the story of the incarnation. God becoming human, the divine becoming flesh and blood. And we find that story appearing all throughout the Bible, not just in a couple of sentences in the beginning of Matthew or the beginning of Luke, but all throughout the Bible. We just have to have our eyes open to see it. And then when we see it, it becomes like a huge refrigerator box sitting in our living room, waiting to be unwrapped, to see the present that's inside. You know, most every Bible scholar believes that the book of Hebrews in the New Testament was written about 30 to 40 years after the death and resurrection of Jesus. Because of the content that is in that book, we don't have a lot of trouble believing that it was clearly written to Jewish followers of Jesus who were being tempted to leave Jesus, to leave him behind and revert back to Judaism, back to the religion of their ancestors that they have left to follow after him. And you know, maybe they were tempted to leave because of family and friends and the kind of pressure that family places on individuals, pressure like disapproval or sometimes shunning or even cutting them off. This happens all the time. Maybe as Jewish followers of Jesus, they missed the elaborate rituals that were connected to their faith upbringing. When they began to follow Jesus instead, it looked totally different. They met in homes and not near the tabernacle. They were simple, poor people that met in very sparse and humble surroundings to worship the one true God. Maybe they missed the prestige of being part of the Jewish tradition, full of its influence in the government. There were no longer any priests to tell them what to do. You know, whatever the reasons, this letter that we just refer to as Hebrews, I believe it was written as a bold statement of the greatness and the supremacy of Jesus, why his life and death are superior to any of the old Jewish formulas for living right with God. And just like all of the other New Testament authors, I believe the writer of Hebrews, let's just say he establishes this truth of the greatness and the supremacy of Jesus on the same foundation, which is the incarnation of Jesus, the birth of Jesus. Check this out. This is out of the New Living Translation, and I think it's helpful for us to read it this way. It says, because God's children are human beings, made of flesh and blood, the Son also became flesh and blood. Oh, there it is. There's the Christmas story hiding in such an unusual place, but right in front of our eyes. For only as a human being could he die, and only by dying could he break the power of the devil, who had the power of death. Only in this way could he set free all who have lived their lives as slaves to the fear of dying. Look again at the beginning. Look what it says. Because God's children are human beings, made of flesh and blood, the Son also became flesh and blood. This is the essence of history's narrative and the heart of the Christmas story. Since the children share flesh and blood, since we as human beings related to each other as humanity, because we share flesh and blood, he, Jesus, became flesh and blood also. Jesus was fully human The divine was made of flesh. At a minimum, that's why he can call us family. Why we can call Jesus our brother. He took on everything that human life had to offer. Temptations, physical illnesses, hunger, thirst, exhaustion, and even death. The enemy's greatest weapon. Look how it continues again. For only as a human being could he die, and only by dying could he break the power of the devil, who had the power of death. The story of Adam and Eve in creation, in the creation account, teaches us that the enemy's disobedience and rebellion against the Creator God, that same disobedience and rebellion is passed on to us. That rebellion in the garden brought into the world both physical death as well as spiritual death, which we would call now separation from God. That disobedience and rebellion is at the heart of our struggle with our Creator. Here's the Christmas story again. Because of the incarnation, because of Jesus becoming a human being, his life would necessarily end in death. It had to. He was human. But it wasn't just any death. Because of Jesus' sacrificial death, we no longer have to live in fear. We no longer have to live in submission to the fear of separation from God through our own deaths. Because that sacrifice secures our future when we receive the gift of God through faith. Jesus rescues us from the power and fear of death, so that right here, right now, we no longer have to live as slaves to sin and slaves to fear in our daily lives. On the cross, Jesus' human life, his human death, and his supernatural resurrection made powerless, rendered powerless, the one who dispenses fear in death. Oh man, the Christmas story in this passage is absolutely amazing. Look at how it ends, just in these 2 verses. Only in this way could he set free all who have lived their lives as slaves to the fear of dying. The gift of Christmas, the miracle of the incarnation is this. Because Jesus was born in the flesh, it is possible for you and me to live free from the power of sin and free from the fear of death, because the Son of God experienced a flesh and blood resurrection from the dead, and now passes on that same resurrection power to you and me. Freedom. Freedom. All of this comes about because Christ is born and dies as flesh and blood. His crown was made of thorns. It was pounded on his head with a physical mallet. He passes out from this flesh and blood life, even in an even more humbling way than he comes into it. He dies the way that the worst of criminals in the Roman Empire did. That is why he came. To go out like that? Really? But things are not as they seem. They're never as they seem. The meaning and mystery of faith and the meaning and mystery of God coming in human form. Yeah, it's hidden. It's a little deeper in there. We've got to dig just a little to see it. Christ was born in a humble stable, not a palace. Think back to that young mother holding the baby Jesus, and staring into his eyes, wondering, like all young mothers do, what would his life be like? What would his ultimate fulfillment be? This mysterious baby born in her womb under such incredible circumstances. Now think back to the 45-year-old mother. That same Mary, the mother of Jesus, sitting at the foot of the cross. The soldiers all around mocking him as he gasps for breath. And this time, she is looking into the eyes of her dying son. Yep. The baby was born to die. But 3 days later, he rises from the dead. And it is there in that moment, his greatness is seen. The fulfillment of his incarnation is made manifest for all to see. And that is the Christmas story. And that, friends, is what we remember in the bread and the juice. We remember flesh and blood. We remember the incarnation. And every time we eat and drink around the table of communion, we remember the Christmas story. Always. Till next time. See ya.